Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2 1 2.
Good morning, everyone. My name is John, and I am delighted to be your worship associate this morning. Welcome to everyone present in the worship hall this morning and those taking part via electronic streaming from their homes or wherever they may be. We acknowledge that our FirstU campus is located on traditional, unsurrendered, and unceded Algonquin, Anishinaabe territory, and that the work of reconciliation is a responsibility of our congregation and of all Canadians. Our goal is to educate ourselves and all who have ears to hear, to be of service to those who are at risk, and to advocate for justice. With current COVID restrictions, we are bringing you Sunday services again from home. Thank you for welcoming us into your home. Do take care and take advantage of online opportunities at FirstU to stay in touch during this time. If you are new to FirstU and would like to learn more about us, please contact us through our email at welcome@firstunitarianottawa.ca. Following our service at 11:30 a.m., please join us as well for a special version of our traditional hospitality hour. You will find the Zoom link on our website at www.firstunitarianottawa.ca or in our weekly email newsletter, the EUU. Now some board announcements.
Good morning. What a pleasure to be here. My name is David Charnushenko. I'm a member of the First Unitarian Board of Directors, and it's my pleasure to give some announcements this morning. We are adapting our COVID protocols for Sunday services and choir practices. Choir practices and recordings will now be allowed inside while keeping precautions for masking, distancing, and ventilation. For Sunday services, unvaccinated children under 12 are welcome in the sanctuary. Masks are encouraged for ages 2 to 5 and required for ages over 5. Family seating on the left side of the sanctuary is recommended. We'll have to figure out if that's stage left or actual left, but unvaccinated adults with valid medical exemptions are allowed in the sanctuary. Please indicate so in your pre-registration. And after service, while we don't offer coffee, congregants are welcome to chat with each other on the front steps or nearby. Masking and distancing is recommended even outdoors. Our Whole Lives, or OWL as many of you know, facilitators. The OWL program offers UU sexuality education program to children, youth, and adults of all ages. We're looking for experienced and new OWL facilitators for programs to start by March 2022 for different age groups, assuming it is safe to do so. If you'd like to join us in creating new OWL opportunities, please contact the board chair, Lisa Sharp. And we are seeking delegates for the CUC 8th Principal vote. If you would like to be one of the FirstU's 6 voting delegates for the 8th Principal vote, you must be a member of FirstU, willing to learn about the subject, and able to attend a series of online events in the coming months. Please consult your EUU for more details about that and how to indicate your interest. And finally, on behalf of the Environmental Action Group, I have a few announcements. The Environmental Action Group is planning a series of fall Enviro actions. This is the first. Air out your home periodically over the next few weeks. Indoor air pollution is often more concentrated than that outside and can build up over time. So open your windows and let the crisp autumn air freshen your living quarters before the temperature drops. Under Enviro Advocacy, a new report criticizes the Canada Pension Plan's ongoing investment in fossil fuels, saying it does not reflect the urgent action needed to address the scale of the climate crisis. Contact Canada Pension Plan's executives. Tell them to move CPP holdings away from fossil fuels and into profitable climate solutions. The good pension news is that Quebec's giant Caisse de dépôt has announced it will divest all assets which produce crude oil products by the end of 2022, and will also set up a $10 billion fund to decarbonize other high-emitting industrial sectors, with plans to reach net zero emissions by 2050. For links to further information and for upcoming events, check out the EUU or the Climate Confrontation page. Thank you. It's a whole new procedure here. Get that right.
During the continuing responses to COVID, we encourage you to sign up to receive the EUU, our weekly email newsletter. Check our Facebook page and our web page for notices and updates. Our calendar is as full as ever, albeit much of it is now online. Whatever your heritage, whatever your faith, whomever you love, and however you identify, today you are a part of our spiritual community.
Thank you, John. David. Bonjour, mes amis. Good morning, one and all. I am the Reverend Eric Meter, this congregation's new settled minister. At some point, I will stop saying new, but it still feels new, so I'm still going to say it. We are here together on this perhaps typical, wet, chilly, early autumn Sunday morning. Today we light our chalice to these words by Gretchen Haley. It starts here, in this moment, in this breath. You feel rising in your chest, this beat building between us, the healing, the hunger, the hope, the courage, the calling, the commitment, the drawing out of a new day. It begins now in the imagination, in this story we weave together, this song we sing, this prayer we bring into being from our hearts to our lips, from our hands to our life, our shared life. It starts here with praise and thanksgiving, forgiveness, and this humble, centering confession that we could be wrong. This promise that we make to keep learning, to keep trying, to keep our sense of humor, to keep it close, this knowing that we are all in this together. Come. Let us begin. Come, let us worship together. Our chalice is lit, and now our first hymn will be offered for us. For the beauty of the earth.
For
For our story for all ages this morning, I've chosen Teddy Bear from When We Were Very Young by A.A. Milne. A bear, however hard he tries, grows tubby without exercise. Our teddy bear is short and fat, which is not to be wondered at. He gets what exercise he can by falling off the ottoman, but generally seems to lack the energy to clamber back. Now, tubbiness is just the thing which gets a fellow wondering, and Teddy worried lots about the fact that he was rather stout. He thought, if only I were thin, but how does anyone begin? He thought, it really isn't fair to grudge me exercise and air. For many weeks he pressed in vain his nose against the window pane and envied those who walked about, reducing their unwanted stout. None of the people he could see is quite, he said, as fat as me. Then with a still more moving sigh, I mean, he said, as fat as I. Now Teddy, as was only right, slept in the ottoman at night, and with him crowded in as well more animals than I can tell. Not only these, but books and things, such as a kind relation brings. Old tales of once upon a time, and history retold in rhyme. One night it happened that he took a peep at an old picture book, wherein he came across by chance the picture of a king of France. A stoutish man, and down below these words, King Louis so-and-so, nicknamed the Handsome. There he sat, and think of it, the man was fat. Our bear rejoiced like anything to read about this famous king, nicknamed the Handsome. There he sat, and certainly the man was fat. Nicknamed the Handsome, not a doubt. The man was definitely stout. Why then a bear, for all his tub, might yet be named the Handsome Cub. Might yet be named, or did he mean that years ago he might have been? For now he felt a slight misgiving. Is Louis so-and-so still living? Fashions in beauty have a way of altering from day to day. Is handsome Louis with us yet? Unfortunately, I forget. Next morning, nose to window pane, the doubt occurred to him again. One question hammered in his head, is he alive or is he dead? Thus, nose to pane, he pondered, but the lattice window, loosely shut, swung open. With one startled, oh, our Teddy disappeared below. There happened to be passing by a plump man with a twinkling eye, who, seeing Teddy in the street, raised him politely to his feet, and murmured kindly in his ear soft words of comfort and of cheer. Well, well, allow me, not at all, tut, tut, a very nasty fall. Our Teddy answered not a word. It's doubtful if he even heard. Our bear could only look and look. The stout man in the picture book. That handsome king, could this be he, this man of adiposity? Impossible, he thought, but still, no harm in asking. Yes, I will. Are you, he said, by any chance, His Majesty, the King of France? The other answered, I am that, bowed stiffly and removed his hat. Then said, excuse me with an air, but is it Mr. Edward Bear? And Teddy, bending very low, replied politely, even so. They stood beneath the window there, the king and Mr. Edward Bear, and handsome, if a trifle fat, talked carelessly of this and that. Then said His Majesty, well, well, I must get on, and rang the bell. Your bear, I think, he smiled, good day, and turned and went upon his way. A bear, however hard he tries, grows tubby without exercise. Our teddy bear is short and fat, which is not to be wondered at. But do you think it worries him to know that he is far from slim? No, just the other way about. He's proud of being short and stout.
In the midst of the whirling day, in the hectic rush to be doing, in the frantic pace of life, pause here now for a moment Catch your breath. Relax your body. Loosen your grip on life. Consider that our lives are always unfinished business. Imagine that the picture of our being is never complete. Allow your life to be a work in progress. Do not hurry to mold it as a masterpiece. Do not rush to finish the picture. Do not be impatient to complete the drawing. From beckoning birth to dawning death, we are in process, and always there is more to be done. Do not let the incompleteness weigh on your spirit. Do not despair that imperfection marks your every day. Do not fear that we are still in the making. Let us instead be grateful that the world is still to be created. Let us give thanks that we can be more than we are. Let us celebrate the power of the incomplete, for life is always unfinished business. Ellen?
My name is Reverend Ellen Bell. I am the spiritual care visitor for this congregation. At this time in the service, we invite people to share their personal joys and sorrows. We indicate these by dropping pebbles in water and allowing the ripples to take their wishes and hopes and sorrows out to the universe where they can be congratulated or commiserated with. A stone for Barb, whose brother Pat died of a heart attack earlier this week. A request from Tony, a former member of our congregation, for his wife Sharon, who is dealing with a serious illness. A stone of big congratulations for Eric, who turned 102 on September 29th. A stone of sorrow for Catherine, whose husband Ted died last week. And congratulations to Asha, who's a former member of our congregation and works with the CUC. She's the daughter of Ravi and Carol, and she managed a successful campaign for Mike Morris in Kitchener-Waterloo, giving the Green Party their first MP from Ontario. And a stone for Caroline, thinking of you. One last stone for all the joys and sorrows kept in our hearts. We will now have a moment of silence.
Our reading this morning consists of two short segments from Alice Blair Wesley's Min's Lectures on the promise of covenant in the liberal religious tradition. A popular reading in our hymnal, Singing the Living Tradition, is It Matters What We Believe by the 20th century religious educator Sophia Leon Faz. That statement is true, but it matters most what we love. The Free Church is an organization we establish and join so that we may help each other find over and over again, in 1,000 varying time frames and settings, what are our own worthiest loves, and therefore, what these loves require of us, if we would be loyal in the most meaningful sense in what we do, in our actions, in the way we live. The basic enterprise of the Free Church is too personally important ever to turn over to any but the faithful, long-term partners in the business of living with religious integrity, the living out of our real and right loves. If we really want to live in the ways of our deepest love, then we must intentionally form a community of love.
Thanks, John. In that reading that John just shared with us, Alice Blair Wesley talks about the formation of Unitarian congregations south and east of here in the nation that is now the nation to the south. These were congregations of settlers new to that region. Most members of these communities had traveled here together, there together, family and friends making the trip together, making new homes near to those they knew well. But in at least one case, settlers found themselves needing to create a village with strangers, people they knew nothing about, had no history with. Any way you looked at it, this was a mighty undertaking. How would they learn how to trust one another? So they called on their best selves, gathering weekly for over a year, to ask each other what they wanted and needed from one another in terms of their fledgling town. And part of that town included what sort of house of worship they might build together, and by extension, what their shared worship life might become. Now, I have to admit that's the romanticized version of that story. True as far as it goes, but we have to say it's incomplete. These were settlers from Europe. No mention is given of the indigenous population then. And then, less important, I'll admit, is Wesley's phrase, the free church. And as attractive as that may sound, for many raised with television ads and newspaper circulars, the term free church simply gets in the way. Free? The spire above this worship hall did not just settle above as if from heaven. It was designed and crafted. Folks paid good money and or invested a good share of sweat equity for it. No, church does not come free. And in truth, what Alice Blair Wesley meant was that our churches are free to choose their own way forward. Even now, our denomination offers support and guidance, but never mandates. Each of our congregations governs itself. But what about this phrase, church? Church. congregation, faith community. I often use these terms interchangeably, but they carry varying and various connotations. In two of the congregations I served previously, in which the word church was in their formal name, members undertook surveys to see if there was enough interest to change the name of the religious institution to include something other than the word church. Churches have done much good and also created widespread and deep-seated harm. The Truth and Reconciliation observances across Canada this last week were yet another example of people rising up around the world to say, enough, no more, no longer on our watch. From clergy sexual misconduct, which is part of every faith tradition, I am sad to say, to the Roman Catholic Church's silence in the face of the rise of fascism before and during the Second World War, to name only two examples, religious institutions are no longer as universally trusted as they once were, and for good reason. I remember a young woman, a Vietnamese immigrant, who had never been inside a church because she was afraid she would be pulled aside and converted away from the Buddhist practice of her people. Her adopted member was a friend of the congregation I served at that time. The three of us were talking outside the church building following some event or other. This was the first time that woman from Vietnam had been to a North American house of worship that was not a Buddhist temple. She was pleasantly surprised that she was not pulled aside for any attempt at conversion. I know the word church can be a trigger word. There will always be tension between what has been and what can be. That is inevitable and even necessary, perhaps. That tension propels us forward to greater justice for everyone. This is a covenantal faith, not a creedal one. The difference may seem vague, but it's critical. We only ask that those who choose to ascribe to a way of looking at, not even ascribe to, but invite into, a way of looking at and moving in the world. The 7 principles guide, and they're right over there, are guides that over time we as a faith tradition have found helpful in leading meaningful and lives that bring greater justice to others and richer lives for all, inherently rich, not monetarily rich. And those principles are not set in stone. We understand that our understanding will change based on our collective experience. Though the principles may contain lasting truths, our current 7 principles were never designed to last forever. It's built into our bylaws that we revisit them every 15 years or less. They were ratified with the expectation that they would necessarily be changed by us over time. And while this was never a formal guiding principle of our faith tradition, it was widely presumed among many, and here I'm talking about the humanists, of which I am one, religious humanist in our movement, that human potential would expand upward forever, You may have heard that phrase, progress, onward and upward forever. Well, the events of the middle 20th century, Hitler, the U.S. bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and the Khmer Rouge laid that claim to rest. We learned a difficult lesson that more humility was called for. And so here we are on a rainy, early autumn Sunday morning in 2021, a year and a half into a global pandemic with unequal global access to vaccines, and those that have the access but are not taking advantage of it for a variety of reasons. Some of us worshiping here this morning are in the worship hall. Others in this community are watching from social rooms, dining room tables, and kitchens. Others will watch this service later on at their convenience. This is uncharted territory for us. And still, one truth remains, that the work of faith communities like this one necessarily continues. The needs for what they can best accomplish have not gone away. There are still things we can achieve together that none of us can achieve alone. An important lesson in what faith communities can do came to me during my parish internship a long time ago now. The Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Sonoma County in California was built on what was then farmland, as close to the geographic center of that county as the congregation could manage. They were proud of that fact. And when I began my congregational year with them, the farmland north of the congregation extended for at least 2 miles before the town in earnest began. But by the time I said farewell to the folks in that congregation, that 2-mile stretch of farmland was interrupted by a brand new meeting house for the Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints. They started with a basketball court, a kitchen, and a dirt parking lot. And the plan was that they'd build classrooms and formal worship space, but that would come later. Now, I'm generally one for process, due diligence, and deliberation, but I have to tell you, sometimes I wish Unitarian Universalists could get things done that quickly. Just do it. And there's another thing I will admit to envying about the Latter-day Saints. They walk their talk. And even though their talk and their walk is fundamentally different from mine in terms of theology, what they say, they do. They tithe. They expect one another to give 10% of what they have to their faith. Now, I've learned that that's nuanced a little bit. Exactly where that 10% is measured from is up to each individual family. But the expectation of tithing is still clear. But let me be clear. While I have been a member of many congregations I have served and pledged to them all, I have never given any congregation I serve a tithe, 10%. Instead, I've aspired to and often given 7%. The pledge I will make shortly in this space will not quite be at that 7% level. My wife Ann is still not yet working, and there are still too many uncertainties as we adapt to life here in Ottawa to commit to the level of generosity that we look forward to attaining. But this commitment, this pledge for $2,400 is our start. I pledge to the congregations I serve because I want folks to know that I have skin in the game. And that said, even when I have formally joined the congregations I've served, I don't vote at congregational meetings except maybe to adjourn. The way I see it, for good or ill, as a minister, I have influence enough. What do our gifts of generosity and gratitude make possible? Well, keeping the spire visible to others, to all, and in good repair is a starting point. But it's much, much more than that. The spire is a symbol of the vibrancy of the faith of the members who gather here. It's a symbol that a religious community, a faith community, can be radically different from religions of old. Yes, we bless our children by dedicating our care to them. Yes, we marry and bury. But we do not ask our children to recite catechisms of old. Instead, we invite them to bring forward what they experience, what they know, what they think and believe in as safe a place as we can provide. Actually, we invite the same of everyone, irregardless of age. And while we do all we can to provide space to one another, we go farther than that as well. As an old philosophy professor of mine might have said, safe space is necessary, but it's never sufficient. We need, and we do our best to create here, brave space as well. Together we encourage one another to move forward with courage, to take risks in a community of others learning to take risks as well. Yesterday, 26 others from this congregation and I did just that, devoting 4 hours on a Saturday in a discussion of the proposed addition of an 8th principle to the Unitarian Universalist current 7 principles. That of making ourselves accountable for doing what we can to dismantle systems of oppression that foster racism and other forms of many different oppressions. Ideas were shared as were concerns and hopes, experiences of grace and experiences of pain. The way forward for us will be messy at times. It will require risk-taking, moving outside of our respective comfort zones. But I'm certain the risks will be worth it. And as I have begun getting to know you, begun learning some of the nuances of your history in this city and with one another, I recognize how much you care about the impact this congregation has in the larger community. In short, I'm happy to invest in the ongoing opportunities and future of this community. I encourage all of you to join me in doing the same.
Good morning. You know, a couple of weeks ago I said to Reverend Eric that we were going to kick off the pledge campaign this week and that I'd like him to tailor his service a little bit in that direction. I think I got a lot more than I expected. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Well, $2,400 more anyway than... So yes, I'm here today to announce that the pledge campaign for 2022 is officially on, and in fact, I was going to invite people to come up to place their pledges in the box. You beat me to it by far. So thank you very much for those who've done that. Some are still waiting to do it, so we can do that in a few minutes. In keeping with our theme of generosity from the last number of years, we titled the 2022 campaign, Being Generously Grateful. We can be grateful for how creative, resourceful, successful we at FirstU have been in the face of COVID-19, with our physical faith home being closed for over a year. We can be grateful for how during this most difficult time, when we may have felt isolated and alone, we were never separated from what we've previously been able to do as a faith community. Grateful for how over the past year we found new ways to offer our Sunday services, thanks to an exceptional Zoom and YouTube crew who seamlessly merged music and message that reached a broader audience than ever before. And we're grateful for our Sunday hospitality hours that became opportunities for us to explore meaningful questions with others in the congregation who we might not have otherwise known before the pandemic. The pandemic has challenged us with many obstacles, but it has also offered us an opportunity to do church, I'll use that term, Eric, differently for the good of our community. By now, those of you who have registered with us as members, who are known as members or as active non-members or otherwise have registered, have received our pledge letter, the brochure, and the pledge form. We ask you to complete the pledge form, return it to us as soon as you can. Remember, any pledge that fits your financial contribution to FirstU, your financial circumstances, is your indication of what your 2022 financial contribution to FirstU could be. If you pledged last year, there's a posted note in your letter to remind you, because we often forget. And so use that in terms of planning on what your 2022 pledge will be. Remember, your pledge is really to us an indication of what you intend to provide to us in the coming year, and it is used for our budgeting and planning. So it is really a useful tool for us. And the amount of participation we get, how many of you actually pledge, is also a really important indicator. If you're watching this service on YouTube or from what other means you might, and you can find information on the campaign on our website, which is firstunitarianottawa.ca, and it's under the Get Involved section, Fundraising, and you will find a pledge form that you can complete and return. Our financial goal for this year is $357,000. Pledging is the major source of funds to this congregation. It takes more than that to keep the lights on and the piano tuned, so we hope that we're able to add to that total with rentals and other fun and fundraising activities. And of course, the Fall Fair, now canceled for another year, was in the past a significant fundraiser for us. We have pegged the cost of living at 3.5%, and we ask you to consider increasing your pledge by that amount. And this year we are also incorporating something a little different, what we call a Pay It Forward campaign, so that for those who can, if you put $120 extra into your pledge form, you can support somebody who is maybe not in as advantageous a position to pledge. That helps to top up some of the pledges so that we can certainly meet the threshold to our responsibility to the CUC. Please don't make any payments for your 2022 pledges until next year, because they will obviously be calculated and categorized into this year's revenue. So we ask you to pledge generously, pledge gratefully, pledge knowing that your financial contribution is being used to further the mission of this congregation. So at this time, those who still have pledge forms, I invite you to come forward and place them in the pledge box. Thank you very much.
Thank you once again. Before we begin to close this time of worship and reflection, a reminder that our hospitality hour will begin online at 11:30. The link is on the church website and was included in Friday's EUU. And after this time of worship, we welcome you to congregate safely outside, maybe with umbrellas. After this service has formally concluded, as you do so, please be mindful to stay masked and maintain social distancing. We extinguish our chalice this morning to these words by Michael Schuler. We have reached the end of this time for the gathering of memory and for letting the imagination play with future possibilities. We have enjoyed magic moments and edified one another. Shall it be concluded then? Or will this adventure now commenced continue? Our separate paths converging, meeting, merging in the unending quest for love more perfect, the joyous struggle for meaning more sufficient, and life more abundant. Is this ending to be an ending, or merely prelude to new, more glorious beginnings? I pose the question. In your hearts lies the answer. This morning's chalice is extinguished, but our connections and our faith remain. Jen, will you offer our closing song once more?
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea. Coule dans mes mains, vie d'espoir et de justice. Donne-dis-moi, ciel, emporte-moi, source de vie, viens vers moi, viens vers moi.
Go in peace. go in gratitude, go in generosity, go in joy, and may all be well. Blessed be.